Okay. Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. We've been having so much fun on the live streams, we might as well continue the party. Um, Let me post this so people know we're live. Um, okay. All right. Well, things I think are more or less going how we might expect in this environment. So we'll sort of do an assessment of where things are. We'll talk about what is actually played out since last time we spoke, and we'll try to talk about the possibilities here. So if you're just now tuning in, make sure you subscribe if you're not subscribed, and give the video a thumbs up, and we'll see what Bitcoin wants to do tonight. We'll probably, I don't know how long I'm going to stay on, but stay on for a little while. So I'll give it to you straight like always. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, and we'll take it away. So Bitcoin now is 29K, and we put in a lower low, not only obviously from these lows, but even from the summer of 2021 low. And if you remember, one of the key things that we said would happen once Bitcoin puts in a lower low, and I'm not even talking about this low, I'm talking about once we put in a low over here, we said that the Bitcoin dominance should go up a lot. And this is one of those things I still think that a lot of people don't like to, they don't really like to meddle with Bitcoin too much, because the altcoins tend to get better gains in a bull market. But remember that altcoins are quick to give back those gains in a bear market, whereas Bitcoin's downtrend isn't nearly as brutal as it can be for altcoins. And coming in with a $29,000 Bitcoin, one of the things we noticed is that the Bitcoin dominance has in fact shot up, right? You can see that this week the dominance opened at 41.62%, and it's now at 43.62%. So it's gone up a decent amount there in a relatively short period of time. And these things are not unexpected, right? It's not unexpected. And it's not, it's the same story, right? It's not even something that it takes a lot of, or I should say, it's not something that was really that unimaginable when you kind of see it was playing out the exact same way over here. And now we have that strong weekly candle for the Bitcoin dominance. And I know a lot of people don't really care about the Bitcoin dominance because you're not trading it. It's like you're not buying Bitcoin dominance. You're not like doing something like that. But if you think about weighting your portfolio, right? If you think about like how you would want to weight your portfolio at various times, if you know that the Bitcoin dominance is going to go higher, or at least you think it's going to go higher, then of course it makes sense to be heavy Bitcoin and light altcoins if you think the Bitcoin dominance is going to go higher. And that way, if Bitcoin goes up or down, you still have exposure to the asset class, even whether Bitcoin goes up or down. And if Bitcoin goes up, then at least you're heavy Bitcoin because it'll outperform alts, and if Bitcoin goes down, at least you're heavy Bitcoin because it'll not drop quite as much as altcoins. So I think we laid out a pretty good thesis on that, and I do think this is the beginning of the breakout. Okay, so I know Bitcoin's dominance is now at just 43.6%. However, I don't think this is like this is the end of the move. Okay, and I've said this a lot on the private channel, but as they say on Frozen, right? It's never too late to do the next right thing. So just remember that the dominance will likely continue to trend higher for a few months. It doesn't mean it's going to go higher every single week. Of course, there could be some weeks here and there where it doesn't. But I do think the Bitcoin dominance has really come out swinging, and it shows why it will remind the asset class why it is king. And going back to Bitcoin, we're currently coming in just below $29,000. And so, it obviously does beg the question as to, where is really the bottom, right? I mean, it's something we always talk about. We always have to consider, like, where is the bottom on this thing? One of the things that's important to consider, and we talked about this a lot, right? We talked about this a lot, is volume. Okay, so we've discussed volume at length. I don't know how many times, right? How many times have we talked about the volume? The reason we talk about the volume is because when it comes to capitulation, the volume matters. Since January, really since November, we've just seen something, just efficient selling, right? It's just efficient selling. And what that means is that it's not really being driven by a liquidation cascade or people panic selling. It was more so being driven by just efficient selling where, I think people just sort of decided, hey, I want to go sell because I think it's a good time to sell. And then they went and did that, right? It wasn't really a liquidation cascade or anything like that. And so what we have to do is we have to constantly check in on the volume. And if you guys remember, we did some videos in the past where we said in order for us to be more convinced of a capitulation or of a potential turnaround point, you need to see a lot of volume. And we have 3 exhibits for that. We have exhibit A, this capitulation, which again, if you remember, it was declining volume into a brick wall of volume, meaning we just had a ton of volume really quickly, and that marked a major bottom, more or less. Well, I should say within a few weeks. We did go slightly lower, but it got pretty close. So like if you had bought on that candle, it bottomed just below $4,000. So it would have gotten you fairly close to the $3,100 bottom, even if it wouldn't have been exact, okay? And of course, no one cares today if someone bought at $3,100 or $4,000. It still was a really great deal. And then you look again, you go look at exhibit B and you say the same thing, right? You have declining price and sort of waning volume until you hit a brick wall, and then it turned the asset class around. And then you look at exhibit C, the May 2021 drop, and again, you had declining volume into a brick wall, and ultimately, all of these times, Bitcoin went on another nice rally above the bull market support band. And 2 out of 3 of those times, we put in a new all-time high, okay? And so we need to constantly ask ourselves, are we seeing the volume, right? Is the volume here that we'd like to see to support a capitulation? And, looking at it right now, it is growing. We're only 3 days through the week, and the weekly volume candle is already above the last week's candle. I do think it makes sense to continue to see how the rest of the week plays out and how the several weeks play out, because a lot of times when it builds up, I mean, it can be it might be more than just like a 1 week thing. You also have to consider too that you could have a capitulation and have a rally without putting in a new all-time high and then just have another capitulation later. Doesn't mean that you can't make money on a rally like this. It just means that not every single rally will lead to a new all-time high. So you need to constantly remind yourself that the market will keep you on your toes, okay? And the volume is going up. There are a lot of people getting shaken out right now, and it's only natural for that to happen in crypto. It's a speculator's market. Us dubious speculators will dubiously speculate, and if people think it's going to go down, then they'll sell, and then if we get to the point where people get super scared, they'll panic sell, and it leads to a liquidation cascade. And then what happens is a lot of times they'll sell at a really bad point, and then rather than continuing to go down, we'll go back up for a while, and it really traps the people that sold the bottom. And you can get in this nasty sort of cycle where it comes down and you sell the bottom, and then it goes back up, and then you buy the top, and then right when you buy it, it then goes back down, and then maybe you sell the bottom again, and then after you sell it, it goes back up. So if you're not careful, bear markets can absolutely bleed you dry of cash, right? They can bleed you dry if you're not careful and if you're not disciplined, okay? So you need to understand that this market is a brutal one. Crypto is a brutal market, and it will eat you alive, and it will eat altcoins alive at the right times. And I've tried to, I've tried to show the reasons over the last few months why altcoins are inherently risky during this phase of the market cycle, and why the Bitcoin dominance should go up. The altcoins at this point, they have bled a lot against Bitcoin. It doesn't mean they can't bleed a lot more. That's the thing. I think a lot of times people underestimate some of the moves that can happen. And one of the things you might have noticed earlier, when Bitcoin bounced back to 30K, what did you see happen with the dominance? It went up. So again, the point that I've said here, and I said it on the premium side for literally like 5 months, and I've said it on the public channel for at least a few weeks, is that it doesn't matter if Bitcoin's price goes up or down. It does not matter. Altcoins are likely going to bleed against it anyways. You don't need to concern yourself with whether Bitcoin goes up or down. If you want to have exposure to the asset class, you need to remember that the dominance is likely going to go up. Therefore, being super heavy into altcoins, you're taking on more risk than you really need to, considering that Bitcoin's likely going to outperform them anyways over, say, like the short to medium term. Now, one of the things I've said many times over the last several weeks is that ignore the people that constantly tell you to buy the altcoin dip, because all they're ever going to do is they're going to troll the people that tell you not to. And when the altcoins do go down, they'll just say buy the dip, and they won't acknowledge that they were telling you to buy the dip before. So you need to shift your mindset right now again to be risk off, right? Like it's a different mentality than being risk on. Okay, I need to protect your capital. This is not a game. I mean, this is serious. Like, we're talking about serious money. We're talking about your lives, like what you can do with that money. So the most common mistake that I see in a bear market, which if you're still not willing to call it a bear market at this point, I can't help you, right? But the most common mistake I see is people say, well, this certain cryptocurrency is a certain percentage down from an all-time high, therefore it must be a good buy, right? Again, you don't understand what a good buy is in a Bitcoin bear market. You have to be patient. You have to wait. It doesn't mean that if you're a day trader, you can't make money trading the ranges. Okay, so like even in this range right here, I'm sure there's some traders that made some money. It doesn't change the fact that it's a bear market, right? It doesn't change the fact that it's a bear market. And if we go into some type of uptrend again, it doesn't necessarily mean that the bottom is in, okay? So you need to remember that, again, in a risk-off environment, it does not make sense to assume that altcoins are going to easily retain their value, even if they are a certain percent down from the all-time high. There's a lot of altcoins that I like, and I talk about them on my channel, and you don't see me talking about them right now. Why? Because I understand it's a risk-off time, and I understand altcoins are risky. So why would I go talk about them if I don't think they're going to do well? If I think that it makes more sense to be into Bitcoin during this phase of the cycle, it doesn't really make sense to talk about too many other things. And so I do think that if you take a step back from the asset class and again look to where we currently are with the Bitcoin dominance, and look at all the same comparisons from prior cycles, as I've said before, the story has been told. It's been told before. You can listen to the story or you cannot, and the dominance is I think primed to go much higher. Okay, 43% is only the start. Or really, I think it's only the start. Yeah, I think we'll be doing videos in a couple months, and this is going to be maybe in the 50s. Okay, so recognize that we are in a phase where the entire market structure has changed. You can no longer assume that things are that buy the dip mentality makes sense. It does not, at least for the long. It's a tough thing because naturally if altcoins were to pump tomorrow, there's naturally going to be some people that'll say, but you said alts are risky. Look, again, I'm not talking to the day traders, right? I'm not talking to these people. I'm talking to the longer term investors that are looking for good value in a long-term buy. Now, could you argue that some of the altcoins are good long-term buys over a 3-year time frame? Yeah, probably. There probably are some that are good buys even at these prices, but it doesn't mean you won't see better prices in the months to come. So and by the way, as I've said before, best case scenario is that Bitcoin stays range bound for months to come. But I mean, right now it still looks relatively weak. I think the main thing that I've been looking for, and I think that we could see some type of relief if the Nasdaq can actually get that bounce. Okay, so I do think we're coming up on an area somewhat soon for the Nasdaq where it should theoretically bounce off of, say, like the 11.5, 11.7 range. But if we don't see a bounce there, and the Nasdaq goes down to the 200-week moving average, then you should probably just go ahead and assume that Bitcoin's going to join it. Okay, I mean, for the Nasdaq to go down to the 200-week SMA, it would be another 10% drop. And I know the 200-week moving average for a lot of people seemed like something that could never happen, but I'm telling you, it's a date with destiny. We don't have a choice. I mean, it's just our date, right? I mean, you have to show up for the date. And it's only a 24% drop. So if the Nasdaq drops another 10%, I think there's a good chance Bitcoin could drop another 20% or something. So I think the main thing to look for right now is will Bitcoin hold these levels and kick us into a range for the next 3 months, because that's what happened over here. And this is why the market can be brutal. Okay, so imagine if you sell the bottom and then the market does something like that again, where you don't really get a quick buy back into the market. Obviously, something like that could be relatively brutal if you sell the bottom and then it just goes back up for a few more months and then goes and puts in a lower low. So remember, the market is designed. I mean, it will wipe you out if you let it. Okay, so you need to sit down, you need to come up with a strategy. You need to say, all right, my macro thesis on the asset class over the next, say, like 6 to 12 months is this. And once you realize what you think is going to happen, then you invest accordingly and you ignore the short-term moves, because they don't mean anything unless you're a day trader. And unfortunately, this is not a day trading channel. There's plenty of them out there where they'll pretend to make money, but this is not the one that I think is focused on that stuff. Okay. So again, I mean, a lot of altcoins look relatively cheap for people that joined in 2021. I mean, hell, ADA's at 50 cents. Polkadot's at eight or $9, right? Matic's at 66 cents. Ethereum's at 2100. So, you're seeing better prices, right? You're seeing better prices. I think it's being reflected in the idea that we say altcoins are risky, right? You're seeing much better prices. And I think, look, I think patience is something that cannot be overstated in this type of environment, because living through bear markets in the past, they can go on longer than you think. There's a lot of short-term bounces along the way that will wreck you if you buy into them and you don't recognize that we are in a bear market. Like, all of these were just sort of designed to really suck out everything it could. And then finally, by the time we saw the final capitulation, a lot of the people had no more cash to buy the altcoin dip because they had already put it all in the market, right? So I do think it's irresponsible not to have cash in this type of environment, and to just continue to be patient. But and I think too, looking at the Ether Bitcoin valuation, we've talked about this as well as looking like a Wyckoff distribution type thing. Still looks that way to me. So I'm not really expecting great things from the Ether Bitcoin valuation for a few months. So it does seem like that could be playing out. But anyways, right now Bitcoin's coming in at 29.3. I understand that a lot of people are probably hurting right now, and these markets are really difficult. And I'm not trying to minimize that. I really am not. At the same time, the only way you're going to set your future self up is if you have your strategy and you stick to it, and you don't sway from it. And I know Luna has gotten a lot of people wrecked, right? I mean, a lot of people are wrecked on this one. This is not really one I talk about on my channel. I always found the interest rates too good to be true, but it is it's currently coming in at 79 cents. And I know on Twitter, there's a lot of people that are relatively optimistic about Luna recovering and whatnot. But I mean, I guess what is your definition of recovery, right? I mean, it bounced up to it bounced up to $5 or something. But, telling someone that a few weeks ago when it was $100 that Luna bounced back to $5, they would have, they would have probably had some choice words for you, right? Um, so I think that the thing with Luna is that there's going to be a lot of difficulties it's going to have to overcome. Like, it is facing a huge uphill battle. I feel like investor confidence is just gone. Like, who's going to put money into UST? Like, well, I feel like people are going to say they learned their lesson, and they're not gonna be the schmuck again. So I I don't really know what to say about Luna. It's not really one I talk about, but it is. I know a lot of people are hurting from it, and I wish I could bring you better news, but I've seen altcoins never recover from things that were not nearly this bad. Okay, so the battle that Luna will face is going to be fairly tough, in order for it to return to its glory days, and I don't know that it's going to be able to do that. So again, I'm just going to tell you like it is. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. You have to remember, a lot of altcoins don't make it to new all-time highs, and that's why I keep saying Bitcoin is king. Bitcoin and ETH are the blue chips. And I do think Bitcoin will outperform Ethereum for a while, but they're the blue chips, and you cannot be guaranteed that any other crypto. Well, you can't be guaranteed of anything, right? Unless in life, except death and taxes. But you cannot assume that every altcoin will set a new all-time high. Just don't assume it. And as I said before, don't measure something from its all-time high as a reason to buy it. Think about everyone who's bought the Luna dip on the way down. Think about every person who keeps posting on social media. They just put in a lot of money into Luna at a certain price, acting like, hey, come look at me, like I'm putting all this money and I'm gonna make some money on it. And then the price of Luna just keeps going down. Like, don't fall into the trap. Okay, it's a way to bleed you dry, and it's just what it is, right? Luna's now at 71 cents. I don't really care. Who cares if it bounces, right? You got to protect your wealth. Or risk off times, call for risk off measures, and this seems like a pretty obvious one, to me. So, what questions do you guys have? Yeah, I know. I keep seeing people on Twitter and YouTube say they just put a lot of money into Luna, and whatnot. I'm just like, why? It's like insanity. Like, you're watching something just slowly depreciate, and you're throwing money into it while you know that it's slowly going down, and that there's so much more. I guess they're trying to time a bounce, but it just seems like a great way to lose your money. Um, I don't know. I think honestly, I think people they've been in the cryptoverse for a while now. They don't really respect their money anymore. I think people need to show a little bit more respect to it rather than just throwing it away. What's my target for Bitcoin on the next bull run? To be completely honest, I do think that the target remains the same, right? My prediction for Bitcoin was always between 100 to 200K by 2023. Remember, it was always going to be 2023 is when I said. I understand that it might not hit that in 2023. It depends on how long we stay risk off. But I'm gonna have to stick with it. I think that it took one bull run to get us to the close, and it'll take another bull run to get us to the six-figure mark, between 1 to 200K. I don't see us going to 400K or 500K or something next cycle, because of diminishing returns. And if we go look at the Bitcoin chart and talk about these diminishing returns and maybe speculate a little bit on it, one of the things that we had talked about before, when looking at prior peak to peak, was that this one here was approximately a 40x. Okay, this is peak to peak. You can also measure it like valley to valley as well, or valley to peak, and then this one was a 20x. Okay. And so in 2019, there's plenty of videos on my channel in 2019 that talked about this. So when 2019, when I started making videos, I sort of speculated that the next one would be out, the next time we would actually see something like that would be all the way out in, say, mid mid to late 2023, and it would be a like maybe a 10x at most, right? Which from the prior all-time high would be a going from 20K to 200K would be at most a 10x. But it would not happen in 2021. It would happen in 2023. Now, since then, I mean, it clearly we've had a cycle. Okay, we're back below a lot of key moving averages. And so whatever comes next will, in my mind, will be a new cycle. Whether we hold the line at 27K or 28K, whatever, or whether we capitulate down to the 200 week or the 300 week, whatever comes next, I do believe will be a new cycle. It would be interesting if it played out like this still, if we made it to those levels by 2023. But I do think it's probably important to think about this as a really diminished return, okay? Because rather than, I mean, there's the 10x by 2023, but rather than think about it like that, if you just look at it like this, it was really only a 3.5x from peak to peak. So we went 40x to 20x to 3.5x. And, like I have to think about that, and I say, well, I don't know. Like, I don't know what to at least make of that, or what that necessarily means. Does it, does it mean that the next cycle is just going to take us up to, what we thought would happen by 2023? Whenever the next bull run comes, whether it's 2023 or whether we have to wait a year after that, whatever, probably the same price, right? I think it's probably not going to be any higher. Now, I could think of a counterpoint to all of this, okay? So I will outline that right now, and I don't really know how valid it's going to be, but given that there have been a lot of firsts this cycle, I think it would be somewhat short-sighted for us not to consider all possibilities, okay? You always have your thesis as to what you think is going to happen, and then you also spend some time thinking about what are some other possibilities, because the market will keep you on your toes. Whatever you think is going to happen probably won't actually happen, and it'll be something else. So one potential path would be where you see all these diminishing returns from peak to peak, and one thing that this whole Luna stuff has me thinking about is the regulation that's coming. Okay, there's going to be a lot of regulation, and one thing to consider here is that I mean, Bitcoin did go back up to the highest risk levels. Okay, so do away with the idea that we didn't have a euphoria phase. We did. We had one. It was in March and April of 2021. But with that said, we could have gone a lot higher if this move hadn't been so explosive. Like if we had done something like 2017, where we just kind of went up a little bit and then came back and checked in on the bull market support band 5 or 6 times on our way up, we could have gone a lot higher. But because we just sort of went straight up without testing it, normally if you go like 3 months without testing it, you don't hold it as, like if you go, like say this one over here was all the way from September until February or something. If you go more than just a few months without testing the bull market support band in between, you often do not hold it as support. So I do wonder if there's some element of regulation could lead us to more money ultimately flowing back to Bitcoin. Like I don't know for sure if that's going to play out, but it is at least something to consider. Like if a lot of cryptocurrencies have trouble getting through some of the regulatory hurdles, it might open up more money to just flow into Bitcoin. And so perhaps it would go a little bit higher than we might otherwise think. The other way to measure this, of course, too, is to measure it from the bottoms and say, okay, this one was about a 58,000%, I mean a 60,000% move or so. This one was about the same. I mean, this one really, if you go to the wicks, it was actually a lot more, but maybe like an 88,000% move. Maybe this was like a 60,000% move. This one was a 12 or 13,000% move, and then this one here was a 2,000% move, right? So you can see the diminishing returns are there, and one way to visualize that, of course, is to always pull up the regression bands. And so, I look at this and I say, well, last cycle, or in this current cycle from the bottom, we saw, I mean, it was 30, about 3K all the way up to almost $70,000, right? I mean, like if you think about it from the bottom to the top, we had around a 23x or something like a 23x. from this bottom to the top, we had closer to like a 100x. And of course, you know, if you come over here and you're talking about, you know, $2 to $1,400, so 2,200, 2,000. I mean, that's 1,000x. So I think when you do the math, it's somewhere around like a 500x or something, and then maybe this one over here is like a 600x, something like that. Yeah, this is just approximate, right? So if you measure it from, say, like this. By the way, if you guys aren't subscribed, make sure you subscribe and give the video a thumbs up. So if you measure it from these sort of market cycles, you say 600x, 500x, 100x, 23x, then you would probably assume that the next one might, you know, one thing to consider is to sort of, if you just look at this move here, it was about it was 1/5, right? And then this one was also about 1/5. So then if the next one is also about 1/5, which I mean it might not be, but if it is, then you might be looking at something like a 4 to 5x move from the bottom. So if the bottom is 20k, then maybe that takes you to 100k. Or if the bottom is 25k, then, you know, maybe it takes you to 125k, or I don't know, like, you know, depending on what the multiple is. So that is something, you know, it's at least something worth considering. Now, remember, a lot of people sort of look at this and assume that, you know, you can't make a lot of money on Bitcoin. You should think of Bitcoin as like a savings account, I think, and understand that when it's in a bull market, a lot of the money can be made in other cryptocurrencies, right? I mean, Bitcoin can make you money, of course, but a lot of altcoins can do relatively well when Bitcoin goes through a bull market. So even though Bitcoin might be giving diminishing returns, there tends to be new projects that are exploring various new sectors of the asset class that can give much better returns, similar to what Bitcoin maybe would have given in one of its first two market cycles. So I think this is something to consider. So I think a lot of this will ultimately depend on where Bitcoin ends up finding a bottom, okay? And then from that level, we can then try to more realistically come up with where it could ultimately top, especially based on the logarithmic regression trend lines, which I'm sure at some point I'll refit. I just haven't done it yet because it's not really that urgent. So it's just something to consider. All right, let me check the comments and see what people are talking about. Yeah, let me go check in on the UST. Yeah, it's currently coming in at around 75 cents on the dollar. I was noticing USDT. I mean, it's a little off the peg, right? I mean, 0.996. I don't really know what's going on here, but you can see it has deviated a little bit. So I think if anything, one thing that this whole ordeal should have taught you is that there are risks in cryptocurrency that you might not have considered. Okay, so consider those risks and figure out how you want to navigate things. Someone says, does Sailor get liquidated at 21K? I don't think they would, because I think they have enough collateral that they could, and they have enough Bitcoin they could just move it over as collateral. So I don't think so. Do I think the flat correction that I made a video on months ago is still possible? Maybe. I'll pull up what you're talking about. So I made a video. When was it? So I can pull it up. 3 months ago. Okay. So I made this video. Here. So they're asking, the question is, could this be a flat correction? So if you remember, one of the things that we covered was I think it's called an expanded flat correction. Okay. And the idea is that in an expanded flat correction, you have like a bottom, you have a top, you have another bottom, you have a slightly higher top, and then the next one ends up putting in a lower low. Okay, so when we talked about this, it was referencing. I'm not an expert at Elliott waves, so I'm not even going to pretend to be, right? There's probably some Elliott wave people that are going to look at this and roll their eyes. But an expanded flat looks something like that, right? You come up, you put in a top, you go down, you put in a bottom, you go back up to a slightly higher price, and then you go back down to a slightly lower price, and then you take off, right? So there's also running flats too, which we're clearly not in a running flat correction because we put in a lower low. So I look at something like that, and I don't really know what I think about it. I mean, like, in this video, we certainly talked about it, and you can see what I drew out, right? Like this was before we had that, that uptrend for 3 months that took us back up to 48K. But when I sort of drew it in, I had us going all the way down to like 25K. And the reason is because in an expanded flat correction, you put in a high, then you put in a low, then you put in a higher high, then you put in a lower low. Like, it's just sort of all over the place, and it's a really difficult type of structure to navigate. And this was all the way back in January. So this chart is not even remotely correct, because from this point we ended up rallying for about 3 months, and now we're close to these prices. But again, it looks very different than what we perhaps imagined back then when Bitcoin was trading for $35,000. So is it possible that it plays out like that? Yeah, it is. And I think that you need to be aware of it. If you're not familiar with it, there is an example where it did play out for the S&P. Okay, so like if you go look at the S&P chart, you'll see an expanded flat correction, right? You can see it. Okay, so let me show you. So the S&P SPY, it put in a high, it put in a low, and then put in a higher high, and then it put in a lower low, and then it finally took off. So I really struggle. I keep thinking about this one. I know I haven't talked about it, but I keep thinking like, oh, should I make another video on it? Like, I don't know that I want to get everyone's hopes up if it doesn't actually play out, but it's a possibility, right? It would, of course, maybe Bitcoin gets some type of a bounce off of, like, somewhere between 20, somewhere around 25K or something. I don't know. I suppose it could play out, but if it does, I would have to believe it would correspond to the Fed pivoting and equities starting to look better. So I think the main reason I'm not so sure of this potential, of this potential move by Bitcoin to play out is, what does the sort of the macro environment look like? And right now, the macro environment doesn't look very good. So if the macro environment starts to look a little bit better, then maybe it would be something to consider. But until that time, I would say let's be somewhat cautious on thinking it will do that, but also recognize that if it does do that, I mean, you can see the pattern, right? Like let me switch this over to, say, like the daily chart. It's a very similar type pattern, just playing out on a much shorter scale. Because I mean, on the S&P, if you go to the if you go to the S&P, it actually played out over years. This first top was the .com bubble, and then this one was right before the financial crisis. I mean, this took place over a decade. So if it is playing out for Bitcoin, it's just playing out over a much shorter time frame. So I don't know. It is something to consider. But even if I would argue that if that is going to happen, the bottom's probably not in. If that is going to happen, probably would need to go lower than just, let me take a measured move and see what the S&P did back then. So from the intermediate low, it went down another 13% below that. So for Bitcoin to go down another 13% from its summer low would put it at around 25K, right? So that's why I ended up drawing it at 25K, was because that would basically be the same type of a move. So even if it does play out, I think that you're still probably not looking at a low. But I don't know. Like, I'm not really sure what I think about it, because I think that the Nasdaq might see some type of a bounce in the next week or so, and if that happens, you might see something like this play out, where Bitcoin comes down and then rallies. But then if the Nasdaq just gets rejected again from, say, like a lower high, then there's still probably more pain to come for Bitcoin. So it's probably safer to assume it's on a different path, unless the the sort of the macroeconomic environment looks a little bit better. It was a good question, though. I've actually been thinking about making another video on it, because now that we actually put in a lower low, it seems a little bit more relevant. But just something to consider. Yeah, what do I think about the 7 weekly red candles on Bitcoin? Could you combine? Um, volume and compare with, we already looked at the volume and compared it to past capitulations. So I don't want to do that again. Yeah, I'm not. Some people are talking about whether things are good investments or bad investments. I'm not speaking specifically about which altcoins are good investments or bad investments. I just think in general, altcoins are bleeding against Bitcoin for a while, right? That's just in general. I think that's what the most likely thing is. Um, the next halving is in early 2024. Yeah, the 7 red weekly candles for Bitcoin. That's like another thing that, of course, kind of has people thinking there should be a bounce sometime soon. Um, so, I mean, this most recent one was brutal, especially when you considering. I mean, one of the things we talked about, right, is in 2018 after we closed below the 100 week, we then immediately had another weekly candle that went down 29%. This weekly candle is already down 15%, and we're only halfway through the week. A 29% drop would put us at around $24,000. So, I mean, there is what happens if we end the week at 24K? Like that is a possibility. If we just simply repeat what happened in 2018 after falling below the 100-week SMA. So, yeah, I mean, I think I look. I know when we used to talk about this stuff, everyone was super skeptical by talking about these lower prices and a date with destiny and that kind of stuff. But now that we're at these prices, you have to consider that 24K, 22K, 20K, like these are all possibilities, right? Like you can't discount these things because we're not even that far away from them anymore. All right, what other can alts fall below their 200-week SMA? Of course. Altcoins don't respect their 200-week at all. Bitcoin hasn't even always respected it. I mean, in March of 2020, it fell below it, right? And we went to the 300-week. I mean, Ethereum, I believe Ethereum went below its 200-week. Yeah. I mean, look at this. Ethereum once upon a time went below its 200-week moving average. So, of course, altcoins can fall below their 200-week. The 200 week's only relevant really for Bitcoin, not the other cryptocurrencies. By the way, if you guys aren't yet subscribed, make sure you subscribe to the channel and give the video a thumbs up. I would appreciate it. And as I said before, if you guys want access to my website, we got some on-chain charts. We got logarithmic regression, ROI. We have the Telegram alerts channel, the Telegram chat room, the risk dashboard, all that sort of stuff into thecryptoverse.com and check it out. Did Well 3 buy any? I don't think so. I mean, not the last I checked. I can check again, but I don't think so, unless he did like in the last few hours. Oh, he did do it in the last few hours. So, well, number 3, it looks like he got 23 Bitcoin, a whopping 23 Bitcoin at 29.4. It's very small compared to the fact that he's got over 126,000 Bitcoin in this address. Someone says ADA is already below the 200 week. Is that true? It is. ADA is already below the 200 week moving average. So, of course, altcoins can go below it. I imagine DOT. Well, DOT doesn't have enough history. Link's got to be. Yeah. Imagine Litecoin. Yep, Litecoin's below it. XRP. A lot of these are below it. A lot of them are below it. The 3-day death cross. We can talk about it. So they're talking about if you go to the 3-day, there's the death cross on the 3-day. How the same thing in 2018. It corresponded very close to the market cycle bottom. It hasn't actually happened yet, I don't believe. But it is going to cross here in the next week or so. So let's see what happens there. The last time it crossed, to the downside was back in. It crossed in November. The bottom actually came about a little over a month after that. But you can see when it crossed in 2018, that led us into a market cycle bottom within about 1 month. You guys keep asking me about altcoins, but I told you, my opinion on altcoins. Like it's the same. It's the same. They're likely going to bleed against Bitcoin, and they're likely going to bleed against the U.S. dollar as long as Bitcoin keeps this range. So, I don't really have anything else to add on them other than you're looking for reassurance on something I can't provide reassurance on. I just think they're going to bleed for a while. And that's why I've been fairly adamant over the last several months that altcoins are very risky right now. So I know you want me to talk about them, but the truth is all the altcoin charts are the same. They're just all the same. You're trading the same type of thing. Doesn't matter what the ticker is at this point. The fundamentals don't matter. We're in a risk-off environment. It just simply does not matter. The altcoins are risky. They're all Bitcoin valuations, and they're all Ether valuations, and they're all USD valuations. They're all really risky. Yes, all USD valuations can bounce if Bitcoin does, but still all Bitcoin and all Ether valuations are still going to bleed. So, you can ask me about all the altcoins you want, but that is my, that's sort of the canned answer I'm going to give you for every altcoin right now. Do I think ETH will reach triple digits? I guess it depends on how low Bitcoin goes. I mean, a 20K Bitcoin means Ethereum should easily be able to test its own prior all-time high at 1400. But if Bitcoin goes sub 20K on a capitulation or something, then Ethereum could easily go, sub 1400 or go below 1000. Like it is possible in a capitulation type scenario. Remember, capitulation scenarios, it never makes sense. I mean, in March of 2020. This one didn't really make a whole lot of sense. And to show you what I mean, if you were to compare what happened in March of 2020 to today, let me show you what it would look like, okay? Because, I think a lot of people sort of don't understand necessarily how bad March of 2020 was, but it was pretty brutal, right? I'm trying to line this up. Look at this if you compare it. Like, it would have happened quicker than this move, first of all. So think about this move that we're currently in. By in March of 2020, we had already recovered a lot from the bottom. So in order for us to have felt the same type of pain that we felt in March of 2020, it would mean Bitcoin going all the way down to $16,000 or $17,000, right? That's the same type of pain that would have to be felt for March of 2020 to sort of repeat itself. But that was a brutal move. I mean, March 2020 was probably the most brutal move that I've experienced in the last few years, even more so than December of 2018. In December of 2018, really it started in November, but during this move, it was fairly brutal, but I also think a lot of us had just kind of like given up hope to some degree. Because we had just been sitting at 6K forever. So like a lot of the people that were going to leave the asset class sort of just left over here. So there weren't a lot of people that remained. But over here, we were actually kind of optimistic because we had just gotten out of this bear market and we were trending back up and everyone kind of had a kick in their step. And then all of a sudden we just crashed like 60% all the way back down near these levels. So it just sort of seemed like this entire thing was just a waste. That was a pretty brutal time in crypto. We have 5,000 people watching. Make sure you guys give the video a thumbs up if you don't mind. We only have 1,500 likes, but 5,000 people. So, would appreciate that. Where are the long-term moving averages? Well, we're already below the 50 week and the 100 week. So the two other main ones to look at that are somewhat relevant would just be the 200 and the 300 because they're both sort of in our fair value logarithmic regression bands. So we know they are possibilities for sure. The 200 week is at 21.8K and the 300 week is at 16.1K. So they're about $5,000 difference in the 200 week and the 300 week. Will ADA return to its 2018 lows? I don't think ADA is going to go back to 2 cents. No, I don't. I don't think so. Um, I mean, it could drop a lot more from where it is. I'm not going to say it's going to hold at 48 cents. I mean, I think it could easily drop another 50% easily if Bitcoin capitulates down. Um, so I'm not going to say it can't do that. I don't think it's going to go back to 2 cents though. No. Can a recession lead to price dropping below the regression band? Well, anything's possible. Do you remember that, markets recover before the economy does? Um, but, we also had the same type of discussion back in 2020, and we went below the regression band, right? We went below it right here. So if it's happened before, it can happen again, I suppose. I mean, this is a wick below it. So could happen. Anything's theoretically possible. We also had a wick below it over here in 2015. Wow, Luna's, gosh, 57 cents. Again, I told you guys, like, I missed the boat on Luna, and I did make a short-term trade on it, and it worked out, but, like, I did not. I mean, this is insane. This is insane. I really feel for the people that are sitting on this. I never really got that plugged into the Terra ecosystem, um, but I know a lot of you guys were. 58 again. I this is not one I really ever see recovering to new highs. Okay, so um, take that for what it's worth. When are we back in the accumulation phase of a lifetime? Not yet. I mean, we can't call this the accumulation phase of a lifetime. Not yet. I mean, you can kind of see where the possibilities are. Any last questions? I don't want to keep this going on too long. Yeah, I mean, I think the high interest rates is what scared me off. Like if it's 20%, I just simply don't trust it. Um, but hopefully people will figure out the flaws and then build other projects that are better. But um, this is one way you grow. Just a very painful lesson for a lot of people. All right, I think we'll wrap it up. Bitcoin's looking a little testy here again below 29K, so uh, we'll see what happens. We certainly have some momentum to the downside, especially if we open tomorrow with the Nasdaq in the red yet again. So tomorrow could be another brutal day. Let us let us take it one day at a time, and we'll eventually, I think, find a more convincing bottom, and then hopefully we can build back. But again, if you guys like the content, remember to subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and if you want the access to the website, all the charts and everything, we have intothecryptoverse.com. All right, guys, I think we'll wrap it up there, unless we're gonna get some type of a move here. Let me just quickly check the shorter time frame chart to see what's going on. It's a 5-minute chart. Yeah, we are moving down right now. 28, 660, 662, 648. The dollar, by the way, is back over 104. So could be starting a new leg up. All right, guys, I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you guys for tuning in. Again, make sure you subscribe if you're not subscribed. We're at 737,000 subscribers, which is kind of crazy to think about, like that we have that many subscribers here. But if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe. And I will see you guys next time. Remember to check out intothecryptoverse.com. All right, bye.